For centuries, the galaxy had been consumed by endless war, a brutal conflict between the Vrontek swarm and the Accelarian Dominion. These two great empires clashed across thousands of worlds, their battles shaping the fate of entire civilizations. Planets were burned, species were enslaved, and once thriving worlds were left in ruins. But in the vastness of space, there was one planet that no one paid any attention to: Earth. Humanity had no faster-than-light travel, no war fleets, and no presence in galactic affairs. To the great empires, they were nothing more than primitive creatures trapped on a small blue world, too insignificant to be noticed. The Galactic Council had long since catalogued Earth as an undeveloped world, unworthy of interference or concern. But that perception would soon change, and the universe would come to regret its ignorance. The war that had raged for centuries took an unexpected turn when a massive Vrontek warship, damaged and barely functional, fell out of hyperspace near Earth's orbit. It was a rare moment of miscalculation, a desperate retreat from a battle gone wrong. The ship, once a proud harbinger of destruction, now drifted helplessly through space. As its systems failed, it was drawn toward Earth's gravity, plunging through the atmosphere and crashing into the ocean. The impact sent shockwaves for miles, triggering tsunamis and lighting up radar systems across the planet. At first, humanity thought it was an asteroid or a strange natural disaster. But when the wreckage was discovered and alien bodies were pulled from the wreck, it became clear Earth was no longer alone. Scientists and military experts rushed to study the remains, examining the strange technology and lifeless bodies of creatures unlike anything seen before. Governments scrambled to contain the information, but secrecy was impossible. The world held its breath, wondering what would come next. It didn't take long for an answer to arrive. The distress signal from the fallen ship had reached deep into space, alerting the Vrontek that one of their warships had fallen on an unknown world. Assuming it was an easy retrieval, they sent a small fleet, just a handful of ships, barely a fraction of their true power. They believed it was a routine operation, a simple task of cleaning up the wreckage and eliminating whatever primitive species had stumbled upon their technology. Their calculations were cold and precise. No species without interstellar travel had ever survived an encounter with them. To the Vrontek, this was nothing more than pest control. But Earth was not like the other worlds they had crushed. Humanity had spent its entire existence fighting wars. From the earliest days of history, humans had perfected the art of battle, waging wars on land, sea, and air. Their weapons, though primitive by galactic standards, were powerful in their own way, designed not just for efficiency but for destruction. And unlike many other civilizations that had fallen before the Vrontek, humanity had one trait that made them truly dangerous: adaptability. When the alien fleet arrived, they expected immediate surrender. Instead, they were met with resistance unlike anything they had encountered before. Human forces moved with terrifying precision, their soldiers refusing to break even when faced with towering alien warriors. Fighter jets, though primitive in propulsion, overwhelmed the invaders with their sheer numbers and tactical coordination. Missile strikes rained from the sky, tearing apart the invaders' landing forces. Snipers eliminated alien officers before they could even issue commands. The Vrontek, who had never struggled against an undeveloped species, suddenly found themselves outmaneuvered, outgunned, and overwhelmed. They had made a grave mistake. They had assumed humans would panic. They had assumed this would be easy. They had assumed wrong. As the battle raged, humanity did something no other primitive species had done before they captured one of the Vrontek ships intact. Military scientists and engineers, working at breakneck speed, tore it apart, learning everything they could. They studied its weapons, its armor, its engines. Within days, they had reverse-engineered basic energy shielding. Within weeks, they had found ways to modify their own weapons to bypass alien armor. The knowledge spread like wildfire. Nations that had once been divided now worked together, united by a single purpose: survival. No one needed to give orders. Humanity had faced threats before. This was just another enemy, another war to win. The Vrontek, humiliated and enraged, sent a second fleet, this time larger, more powerful. But the humans were ready. They had learned. They had adapted. This was no longer just a battle. It was a war, and war was something humanity understood better than any species in the universe. The skies above Earth burned as alien warships fell, taken down by tactics the Vrantech couldn't comprehend. Pilots who had trained for dogfights in outdated jets now flew hijacked alien crafts, pushing them beyond their limits. Soldiers wielded modified alien rifles with a level of precision that shocked their enemies. The battlefield was chaos, but humanity thrived in chaos. By the time the Vrantech realized their mistake, it was too late. Earth was no longer just a battlefield, it was a fortress. Every human, from the highest-ranking general to the youngest civilian, was prepared to fight. The Vrantech, once unstoppable conquerors, now found themselves retreating. They had underestimated a species that had spent its entire history perfecting the art of war. But even as humanity celebrated its first victory, another threat loomed. The Excelarian Dominion, the sworn enemy of the Vrantech, had been watching. They had expected Earth to fall. Instead, they saw a species that had done the impossible. A species that had adapted faster than any known civilization. A species that had turned an invasion into a victory. Now, they too had taken an interest in Earth, not as an enemy to be crushed, but as a potential ally. However, the question remained, would they truly offer peace, or were they simply waiting for the right moment to strike? For the first time in history, humanity was no longer ignored. The war that had once bypassed Earth had now made it the center of galactic attention. The great empires, once blind to humanity's existence, now saw them as a threat, an anomaly, a force unlike anything the universe had ever seen. The galaxy had made a fatal mistake. They had thought humanity was primitive. They had thought Earth was unimportant. But now, the universe was watching, and humanity was ready to show them what true war looked like. The Vrantech swarm had never known defeat. For centuries, their warships had crushed entire civilizations, their armies had reduced thriving worlds to dust, and their fleets had burned everything in their path. Their enemies feared them, their allies obeyed them, and the Galactic Council, despite its protests, knew that no force in the universe could stand against them. The Vrantech were the masters of war, undefeated, unchallenged, and unquestioned. But that was before they reached Earth. The first invasion had been a disaster, a humiliation unlike anything in their history. They had expected an easy victory, yet their forces had been annihilated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. They had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make that mistake again. This time, they would send the full force of their armada, a fleet so massive it had never been defeated in battle. Thousands of warships, equipped with weapons capable of vaporizing continents, emerged from hyperspace, blotting out the stars above Earth. This was not just an invasion, it was an extinction event. The Vrantech had come to erase humanity from existence, to ensure that no one would ever dare defy them again. On Earth, there was no panic. No surrender. No pleading for mercy. The first attack had taught humanity a lesson. This was not a war for survival. This was a war for dominance. Nations that had once been divided now stood as one, their armies prepared, their weapons upgraded with stolen alien technology, and their strategy perfected. They had studied the Vrantech, learned their weaknesses, understood their tactics. Humans were not the strongest species in the universe, nor the most advanced. But they were the most unpredictable, and unpredictability was something the Vrantech had never faced before. As the alien fleet began its assault, unleashing firepower that should have turned Earth into ash, they were met with something they had never encountered: resistance. Humanity did not cower beneath the bombardment. They struck back. Orbital defenses, built in secret after the first invasion, came to life, launching missiles that tore through enemy formations with terrifying precision. Ground-based railguns, powered by energy cores ripped from fallen Vrantech ships, fired projectiles at hypersonic speeds, punching holes through warships that had never known defeat. Human pilots flying a combination of Earth's finest aircraft and modified alien fighters weaved through enemy squadrons, outmaneuvering and outgunning them with sheer skill. For the first time in their history, the Vrantech fleet found itself struggling. Their battle formations, once perfect and unstoppable, collapsed in the face of an enemy that did not fight by the rules. Humans did not engage in predictable patterns, did not retreat when they should, and did not surrender when overwhelmed. They adapted, they improvised, and they fought with a determination that defied all logic. The battle raged in the skies, but the true nightmare for the Vrantech began when they landed on Earth. Expecting a simple ground invasion, they were met with an enemy that knew the terrain better than any other species. Urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, sabotage. Humanity used every trick in the book. Snipers eliminated alien commanders before they could issue orders. Traps turned once safe landing zones into death traps. Entire regiments of elite Vrantech warriors were wiped out by ambushes in dense forests, ruined cities, and underground tunnels. The aliens had come expecting a slaughter, but they were the ones being hunted. Fear spread through the ranks of the invaders, something they had never experienced before. Their technology was superior, their numbers overwhelming, yet they were losing. It was not just the weapons or the tactics, it was the sheer willpower of their enemy. Humans fought like they had nothing to lose, like every battle was their last, like surrender was never an option. Then came the moment that changed everything. A captured Vrantech warship, reverse-engineered and piloted by human soldiers, launched from Earth's surface, leading an attack that shattered the heart of the enemy fleet. The sight of their own ship turning against them, firing upon their flagships, broke whatever confidence the Vrantech had left. Panic spread. Their formations collapsed. Their commanders, once so sure of victory, now hesitated. And in war, hesitation meant death. Humanity pressed the attack, their forces pushing forward with a ferocity that defied all logic. Ships that had ruled the galaxy for centuries now burned in the skies above Earth, crashing into the oceans, exploding in the atmosphere. What was once the pride of the Vrantech swarm was now nothing more than wreckage. The fleet that had never been defeated had fallen, not to an advanced empire, not to a superior force, but to a species they had once ignored. As the last remnants of the Vrant forces fled, broken and humiliated, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not only survived, but they had won. The message was clear. Earth was no longer a forgotten world, and humans were no longer a primitive species. They were warriors, tacticians, survivors. The Vrantech swarm, once feared across the universe, now knew fear themselves. But even as Earth celebrated its victory, humanity knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated them once. It would never make that mistake again. The war with the Vrantech had changed everything. Humanity, once an unnoticed species on an insignificant planet, had become the center of galactic attention. They had not only survived an invasion, but had shattered the might of an empire that had never known defeat. The universe had learned a hard lesson. Earth was not weak, and humans were not to be underestimated. But even as the wreckage of the Vrantech fleet still burned in the skies, another force had begun to move. The Excelarian Dominion, the sworn enemies of the Vrantech, had been watching Earth closely. Their arrival was not like the Vrantech. There were no warships, no threats, no demands. Instead, a diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying ambassadors with words of peace and promises of alliance. The Excelarians introduced themselves as friends, as saviors. They claimed to have been at war with the Vrantech for centuries, fighting against their tyranny, struggling against overwhelming odds. Now, they said, humanity had given them hope. Together, they could finish what Earth had started. With the Excelarians' advanced technology and the humans' indomitable will to fight, the Vrantech swarm could be wiped from the galaxy forever. It was a tempting offer. The leaders of Earth had no reason to trust aliens, but the Excelarians spoke with sincerity. Their records showed a long history of conflict with the Vrantech, and their technology was undeniably superior. They provided humanity with shields capable of withstanding orbital bombardment, weapons that could cut through enemy armor like paper, and ships that moved faster than any human design. Everything they gave was a gift, proof of their goodwill. And in return, they asked for only one thing: humanity's warriors. First, the alliance seemed perfect. Human soldiers were deployed alongside Excelarian forces, striking deep into Vrantech-held territory, claiming victory after victory. The battles were swift, brutal, and decisive. The Vrantech, still reeling from their defeat on Earth, were unable to stop the onslaught. Humanity, once considered primitive, now stood at the forefront of the greatest war the galaxy had ever known. They were heroes, liberators, legends in the making. But something wasn't right. Reports began to surface of strange inconsistencies in the war. The Accelarians always seemed to know exactly where the Vrantech were weakest, as if they had intelligence far beyond what should have been possible. Human forces were often sent into the most dangerous battles, while Accelarian units stayed back, watching from a distance. And then there were the disappearances. Entire squads of human soldiers, gone without a trace. Their deaths were blamed on the chaos of war, but there was no evidence, no bodies, no wreckage. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. It was only when a damaged Vrantech warship was captured that the truth began to surface. Intercepted transmissions revealed something shocking. Accelarian and Vrantech communications had been intertwined for decades. The two empires, supposedly sworn enemies, were not truly at war. They had been working together, controlling the conflict, shaping it to suit their own needs. The war was never about victory or defeat. It was about control. And humanity, the unpredictable variable, had become their greatest threat. The alliance was a lie. The technology, the weapons, the promises, it had all been part of a larger plan. The Accelarians had never wanted humanity as an ally. They wanted them as a tool, as soldiers to fight their battles, as test subjects to study, as potential weapons to be unleashed when needed. And when humanity had served its purpose, they would be eliminated, just like countless other species before them. The revelation came too late. Human forces were scattered across Accelarian-controlled territories, cut off from reinforcements, stranded on distant battlefields. The moment Earth uncovered the truth, the Accelarians acted. Their forces turned on their human allies, massacring entire regiments in coordinated strikes. The same weapons they had given humanity were now used against them. The same shields that had protected Earth were now part of the blockade, trapping them in their own solar system. The betrayal was swift, brutal, and absolute. But the Accelarians had made one fatal mistake. They believed that, like so many before them, humanity would break. They thought Earth would surrender, that the shock of betrayal would crush their spirit. They had forgotten one crucial thing: humanity had already faced annihilation once, and they had survived. The response was immediate. Trapped soldiers did not wait for rescue. They adapted, using enemy technology against them, turning the battlefield into chaos. Captured Accelarian ships were hijacked, their systems reprogrammed, their weapons turned inward. The humans who had been sent to die instead became the deadliest force in the galaxy, striking from within, sabotaging Accelarian operations, dismantling their war machine piece by piece. On Earth, the betrayal ignited something even deadlier, a thirst for vengeance. The Accelarians had given humanity the means to fight among the stars, and now they would regret it. Factories worked day and night, producing warships built with stolen technology but designed with human ingenuity. Fleets that had once been grounded on Earth now prepared for war, not as pawns, but as an independent force, ready to burn the galaxy if needed. The Accelarians had sought to use humanity as a weapon, but they had failed to understand the nature of their new enemy. Humans did not fight for conquest, nor for power. They fought for survival, for revenge, for the sheer refusal to be controlled. And now, with their betrayal exposed, the Accelarians would face a war unlike any they had ever known. The galaxy had conspired against Earth, but in doing so, it had created its worst nightmare. The invincible fleets of the Vrantech had fallen, the deception of the Accelarians had been revealed, and humanity stood alone, angry, armed, and ready. The true war was just beginning, and this time, it would be fought on humanity's terms. The betrayal of the Accelarians had been swift, brutal, and nearly absolute. They had played the role of allies perfectly, giving Earth technology, weapons, and ships, while secretly planning humanity's downfall. The war with the Vrantech had been nothing more than a deception, a carefully orchestrated game where humans were used as pawns. But the Accelarians had underestimated one simple fact: humanity did not break. They adapted, they learned, and most of all, they never forgot a betrayal. What had begun as an alliance had turned into a war, not just for survival, but for vengeance. The Accelarians had sealed their own fate, and now Earth prepared to strike back. The first target was Outpost X-17, a heavily fortified Accelarian command center deep in the void of space. The Accelarians had thought it to be impenetrable, protected by layers of defenses and patrolled by elite warships. But they had designed their security against threats they understood: rebels, pirates, and rival species. They had not designed it for humans. A small fleet of stolen Accelarian warships, now piloted by humans, emerged from the darkness of space. Their stolen transponders fooled the outpost scanners, making them appear as friendly ships returning from battle. The deception worked long enough for the human operatives on board to disable the station's long-range communications. And then, without warning, the attack began. The outpost's defenses never stood a chance. Human-engineered railguns, modified with stolen Accelarian energy cores, fired projectiles at hypersonic speeds, shattering shield generators and tearing through hull plating like paper. Strike teams infiltrated the station, moving with brutal efficiency, eliminating Accelarian officers before they could react. By the time the alarms rang across the station, it was already too late. Within minutes, Outpost X-17 was under human control. But this was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, the Accelarians watched in shock as human resistance grew stronger. What should have been an easy extermination had turned into a nightmare. Their forces had underestimated humanity's ability to wage war, to adapt, to turn the enemy's own weapons against them. Every occupied world became a battlefield, every human-controlled sector a problem they could not contain. The war they had started was no longer in their control. Earth had become something far worse than a victim; it had become a predator. The next blow came at Velther Prime, one of the Accelarians' largest military shipyards. The fleet stationed there was immense, an overwhelming force designed to crush rebellions before they could begin. But the humans did not come in a fleet. They came in silence, hidden in stolen Accelarian cargo ships, sneaking past defenses unnoticed. By the time the Accelarians realized something was wrong, it was already over. A single command from the human strike team activated a virus that had been uploaded into the shipyard's main systems, shutting down energy shields, disabling ships, and throwing the entire station into chaos. Before the Accelarians could react, the humans struck, planting explosives on critical structures, sabotaging fuel lines, and hijacking as many warships as they could. When the explosives detonated, Velther Prime was reduced to nothing but debris, and the stolen warships disappeared into the void, ready for the next battle. The Accelarians were in a panic. Their fleet, once invincible, was now being torn apart from within. Every battle they fought only made the humans stronger. Every world they occupied became a graveyard for their own soldiers. They had planned to wipe out humanity quickly, to erase them from history before they could become a true threat. Instead, they had created a war they could not win. The galaxy watched in silence as the impossible happened. The mighty Accelarian Dominion, once feared across the stars, was now on the defensive. But humanity was not done. They had one final message to send. The siege of Velther Prime, the Accelarian homeworld, would be the battle that ended the war. The Accelarians had believed it untouchable, hidden behind layers of defenses, protected by a fleet larger than any other in the galaxy. But their greatest strength had now become their greatest weakness. Their defenses were designed to keep enemies out, not to stop an enemy already within. Using stolen codes and hijacked warships, the human fleet slipped past the outer defenses before the Accelarians could react. And then, Earth unleashed its full power. Modified human warships, equipped with hybrid technology, fired weapons that combined brute human firepower with stolen Accelarian energy cores. The once great fleet of Velther Prime burned in its own orbit, its ships helpless against the relentless human assault. Planetary defenses, designed to hold off traditional invasions, were bypassed with precision strikes that crippled power grids and military outposts. Velther Prime, the heart of an empire, was falling. The Accelarians, desperate and broken, pleaded for surrender. They offered peace, begged for mercy, promised to withdraw from human space. But Earth had not forgotten the betrayal, the massacres, the lies. The Accelarians had sought to use humanity as a weapon. Now, that weapon had turned against them, and humanity was delivering its final blow. As the last remnants of Accelarian resistance crumbled, Earth sent a single message across the galaxy. This war was never ours, but you made it ours. Never again. The warning was clear. Humanity had not only survived, but had risen to a level no one had ever expected. The galaxy had played its games, waged its wars, and thought of Earth as nothing more than a pawn. But the rules had changed. The galaxy now knew the truth: humanity was no one's pawn. They were the masters of their own fate. And for those who had betrayed them, there would be no second chances. The war had ended, but the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity, once an insignificant species on the fringes of the galactic map, had done the impossible. The mighty Vrantech had fallen, their war fleets shattered. The Accelarians, the architects of deception, had begged for mercy as their empire burned. And now, in the aftermath of war, the galaxy looked toward Earth with fear, with awe, and with uncertainty. The great empires that had once ruled unchallenged had been broken, their power shattered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. But humanity had not fought for conquest. They had not fought for power. They had fought to survive. And in surviving, they had become something greater than anyone had ever imagined. The remnants of the old galactic order gathered in secret, their leaders whispering in shadowed halls. The once great empires, now weakened and exposed, feared what would come next. Would humanity take revenge? Would they expand, crushing all who stood before them? Would they demand submission, as the old powers had once done to weaker species? But Earth did not move to conquer. There were no demands, no fleets sent to subjugate, no rulers claiming dominion over the stars. Instead, humanity did something no empire before them had done. They reached out, not as conquerors, but as equals. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds saw what had happened and dared to hope. Humanity had stood alone against the most powerful forces in the universe, and they had won. They had broken the chains that others believed could never be broken. And if Earth could stand, perhaps others could too. One by one, the voices of the forgotten, the abandoned, the weak began to rise. Rebellions erupted in the ruins of fallen empires. The old rulers, struggling to regain control, found themselves powerless against the tide of change. The galaxy was no longer theirs to control. The balance of power had shifted, and at the center of it all stood humanity. But Earth did not seek to rule. Instead, they did something no one expected. They built. Where once warships had been forged, they constructed ships for trade, for exploration, for diplomacy. Where armies had once gathered for battle, they trained diplomats, engineers, and scientists. The human fleets, once feared for their destruction, became something new: guardians of peace, protectors of those who had been cast aside. They formed the Terran Accord, an alliance not built on fear, but on cooperation. And one by one, the broken and the lost joined them. Yet, even as the galaxy changed, there were those who refused to accept it. The remnants of the old empires, bitter and afraid, plotted in the shadows. They whispered of revenge, of reclaiming what had been lost. They saw humanity not as a savior, but as a threat to the old ways, to the control they had once wielded. And so, in the depths of space, a new war began, not one of open battles, but of hidden schemes, of assassinations, of secret fleets gathering in the dark. But humanity had learned from its past. They had seen betrayal before, and they were ready. The first sign of treachery came in the form of a disappearance. A Terran diplomat, sent to negotiate peace with a former enemy, never returned. Then, a trading convoy was attacked in deep space, its cargo stolen, its crew never found. The signs were clear. The old powers were trying to claw their way back, to strike from the shadows before humanity could become too strong. But Earth did not wait for the knife to strike. They acted. A fleet, swift and precise, descended upon the hidden warlords plotting in secret. Their bases, buried in forgotten corners of the galaxy, were uncovered and dismantled before they could rise again. The conspirators, believing themselves safe, found themselves exposed, their plans crushed before they could begin. Humanity did not seek war, but neither would they allow the past to repeat itself. The message was clear: there would be no return to the old ways. The era of oppression, of empires built on fear, was over. The future belonged to those who sought to build, not to destroy. And so, in the ruins of war, something new was born. The Terran Accord became more than just an alliance. It became a symbol, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had known only conquest and tyranny. Where once humans had been dismissed as nothing more than a primitive race, they had now become something far greater, a force that shaped the fate of the universe. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as the architects of a new era. The old empires had fallen. The galaxy had changed. And humanity had risen not as just another power among the stars, but as the power that would decide the future.